What is up, everyone? Welcome to part 2 of the virtual powwow here at fantasypoints.com. I am John Hansen, joined by the usual cast of characters here. Our guy, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, our man, Benjamin Kukanis behind the glass, doing the voodoo that, well, he do. Doing a good job per usual. I think my camera angle just got screwed up here somehow. I have no idea how that happened, but we shall just move onward and upward. I will fix that as we move along here. Our guy, Greg Cosell, and also Adam Caplan is here, and we're ready to go here. So let's, without any further ado, kick it off here. We covered yesterday the NFC East and the NFC North. Today, we're going to hit up the NFC South and the NFC West. We start in the NFC South with the Atlanta Falcons. I'll just throw it on out there. Adam, I could start with you. Would you feel better or worse about a guy like Calvin Ridley with Julio Jones off the roster? I mean, there are data points that say and point to, Ridley cleans up when Julio is not on the field. But overall, the long term, I'm a little concerned. Would you feel better or worse about Calvin Ridley if Julio Jones is off this roster?
Well, theoretically, his target share is also going to go up. And Pitts obviously will be involved. But you and I talked about this on our show on Monday, that, look, they just don't have much behind Jones and Ridley. So he's going to have to be the guy. And look, eventually they knew this when they drafted Ridley. Later in his career, he would take over for Jones and Jones would retire. Well, the difference is the Falcons are likely going to wind up trading him at some point. Could be actually soon. We'll see. And he's going to be their number one pass target. And then the other thing is how much, if this does happen, like I think it's going to happen eventually, how much of a share will Pitts get? Will he be ready as a rookie hybrid tight end? How much could he get? And how much volume could he get early on? These are things with the new coaching staff, by the way, which we're not going to know right now. But to answer your question, yes, Ridley's target share will go up and obviously would benefit him. Then we'll have to see how good Arthur Smith is once he starts getting double teamed. Can he win? We're not going to know that until we get there.
There's been some talk here. I'm not exactly sure where it emanated from. I don't believe it was a Julio Jones call about, Matt Ryan losing, a little juice off the fastball. Greg, I think that's fair. He's Matt Ryan. He's the same guy pretty much every single game. But do you think that's a fair statement that he has lost a little juice off the fastball, which is really a concern because he never had a gun to begin with?
Well, I think it's noticeable on deeper throws. I think the deeper throws lose velocity on the back end. They don't quite get down the field as much as they did earlier. Never had a big arm. But I think Matt Ryan can still function perfectly fine. He had a good year a year ago. I think one player, and I'm sure you guys are aware of him, and they really like him, is Russell Gage. He was actually the most targeted player on third down last year for the Falcons. So obviously he did most of his work from the slot. So the question is he now an outside receiver? In other words, if they go 12 personnel, which Arthur Smith likes to do, and they certainly have two quality tight ends in Pitts, who's a hybrid, and Hurst, who did catch 56 balls a year ago.
Yeah.
If they go 12, is Gage the other wideout? And what can they do formationally? Because Pitts can line up anywhere.
The kid Zacchaeus, he's kind of like Gage, right? I'm sure he get outside. Where's Zacchaeus typically line up?
Olamide Zacchaeus?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's a little guy. I mean,
exactly.
He had a big game last year when Ridley was inactive. He had a big game against Denver. He's kind of a, he fits the category of a lot of the receivers that came out this year, the smaller receivers that you can move all around. I don't know if he's a full-time player. He's a player they like as well because he can provide a big play dimension.
That's a great point, Adam. Who do they have otherwise here in the roster to line up outside if they let go of Julio Jones? Does anyone stand out to you?
Yeah,
Daryl's in the mix, but he's kind of a joker type of player.
Yeah, no, Gage is a guy they like because he can move, but I don't know anything about Frank Darby. Maybe Greg could chime in there. Was there 6?
Well, they also just signed Tajay Sharp, who played in Tennessee when Arthur Smith was there.
Yeah. He's there to play. Yeah, he can't run, just so you know. He just doesn't run very well. I've talked to guys who've coached him. He's a great kid. He'll block for the run game. He just doesn't run very well. That's why he keeps bouncing around. So I'd be shocked if he would factor in.
Russell Gage, probably the quietest 72 catch season in league history.
Did he really? Holy.
Pretty sure it was 72, Graham.
He caught 72 balls. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he was their most targeted third down receiver. So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Graham, you have some thoughts on Calvin Ridley?
Yeah. I mean, right now where it's May 26th, we don't know if Julio is going to be on the roster or not. But if they do end up trading Julio, Calvin Ridley has like the wide receiver one in his range of outcomes. Like I know we love Kyle Pitts, but man, I mean, in the 8 games that Julio has missed over the last 2 years, Calvin Ridley has averaged 107 yards per game. He's put up 20 fantasy points per game. He's gone over, I believe it's 65 yards in every single game or scored a touchdown. Man, the ceiling for Ridley is just going to be crazy. I mean, he's averaging like 11 targets per game without Julio. So, that'll come down a little bit with Pitts, seeing some of the target share. But man, like it's interesting because like if Julio sticks, Ridley's probably a little bit overvalued right now because Pitts is, going to command a pretty big chunk of the targets. But if Julio is dealt, Ridley, man, I mean, he could outscore everybody this year.
Adam, what is your confidence level in the new staff, Arthur Smith, Dave Vergone, taking advantage of a unicorn type of player in Kyle Pitts? I mean, the dude is, if they let Julio go, he's going to have to line up outside and kind of play a Julio-like role at times. But your thoughts on this coaching staff? They're just kind of getting started, but certainly some track record there of success in Tennessee. What is your gut feel? What's the word in the street on these guys' ability to take advantage of a guy like Pitts?
Vergone will take care of the pass game concepts. He was responsible or helped for last year with, or he was with Chicago, but he really did a good job with Chicago. I know they spoke very highly of him. And so did the Titans when he was there. And he's with Arthur Smith, who's one of his best friends. So I assume, based on what I know about Vergone's background, that they have a pretty good plan in place for Pitts, whether Julio Jones is on the roster or not. I believe that they'll be able to free up Pitts. And now I understand they haven't coached anybody like this guy, but one of the big reasons why they drafted Pitts at number 4 is because Arthur Smith has a plan. That was the way I understand it. He was a very strong voice in Pitts being drafted at number 4 and not taking quarterback. So they obviously have to account for that. And they're going to have a plan for him. He'll be targeted a lot. And by the way, Pitts is a great kid. He's pre-draft testing. I'm told he did very well with teams. So I expect him. It's one thing for the guy to be 4th overall. He still has to prove that he knows what he's doing when he gets on the field. And everything I've heard about Pitts would suggest that he should be a factor early on.
Joe, we've got one man here in the backfield. That is Mike Davis. Really not much else. 6th round pick for fantasy. Javian Hawkins, the kid Huntley might be in the mix here, but is this too good to be true, Joe, with Mike Davis lined up?
I'm starting to get worried, John, because 5th, 6th round pick, it's totally fine for him. Like, that's not going to break your draft. It has a chance to make it. I'm worried, though. I don't know. Have you guys seen the photos that Mike Davis has been posting on Twitter? I mean, he's blowing up his own ADP. His legs are the size of tree trunks. I mean, but, John, I know Greg watched Javian Hawkins, and I want to get his opinion on this backfield, but, I mean, Arthur Smith's going to run the football. They're going to throw it more than they did in Tennessee. They have to. I mean, the personnel dictates that. They don't have Derrick Henry. But Mike Davis did a solid job for fantasy when he came in for McCaffrey last year. It looks like they're giving him the opportunity. Greg, from a talent standpoint, can Mike Davis be the foundation to borrow one of your favorite terms within the context of this offense?
Well, then you have, what they have to figure out is what they want their offense to look at. Arthur Smith has clearly spoken about the fact that this is not going to be the Tennessee offense because they don't have that kind of player in the backfield. So, the question is, how many carries per game does a Mike Davis get? Javian Hawkins is an interesting player, and he's a player that they like. Because I actually spoke to them about him. Now, again, what that means, that's really hard to know. But Hawkins is a naturally quick and explosive back. He's got really good balance. He's got home run hitting ability. Obviously, he's not particularly big, so he's not a guy that will become a quote unquote feature back. But, I think that they might see him as a guy that can mix in with Mike Davis.
Yeah.
So what you're ultimately asking, I think, is, how many carries a game is Mike Davis going to get? And that's really hard to know. Davis is built really well. He's not small. He's a grinder. So if they're comfortable with that, if they can create big plays in the pass game and they're comfortable with a back that maybe can get 230 carries and be a, average of 4.2, be that kind of guy, they'd be very comfortable with that in the context of what they have.
Greg, I think Joe used that word foundation, and I don't know if he even meant to say that. I think what he meant was, like, as you break it down, you have foundation backs like Derrick Henry, and then you have primary backs. Like,
well, he'll be their primary back.
Right.
The question is, what does that mean, from a fantasy standpoint in terms of number of carries? I mean, I'd be curious, John, what your projection is for Mike Davis right now, given that he's the only proven back on their roster.
Well, let's take a look and see what I have for Mr. Davis. That would be, it's a little bit of a difficult situation because I'm kind of waiting to see if they do anything else. I know you can't just, like, viable running backs don't grow on trees. Only so many good options there on the street. I have him with 210 carries and 44 catches. So, I do have him.
And that might make sense. That could
just so you know, John, the reason why they can't, they literally, they have the least amount of cap space of any NFL team.
Correct.
They can't really do anything right now. They're tapped out of restructures. They've done as many as they can. So that's why they haven't added. They will add somebody at some point who may or may not take some carries away from Davis. I would expect them to get someone who would. I mean, asking Mike Davis to do this, I mean, he did a very good job last year as filling in. But as John, you and I have talked about, asking him to do it for 17 games now is a little bit strong for me.
Hey, Adam, on the Julio Jones thing, like, do they have to trade him before June 1st? Or
no, they're going to, no, I mean, they're going to get, because of each team gets 2 post June 1 designations. So they're going to, some of the guys they release, they're going to get a cap rebate next week. You're going to see some teams make some moves next week, which on June 2nd and after, that didn't have enough money. Now they're going to have enough money. Okay. They have, as Arthur Smith said, it was interesting. He didn't want to address Julio Jones at all, just to say that with their cap situation, they have some things that they can do after next week, and there's some things that they can't do. One of them is trading Jones. He's not going to say it, and the way that they'll save some cap space. Yeah. And then the issue then trading him is to wherever he goes, what are they going to get back? Are they going to get no player back so they don't take cap space back? Or are they just going to get draft picks? I would think draft picks because of their situation, but they're in a dire position. You rarely see situations like this.
Well, Adam, as we know, one player that will factor into the mix in the backfield is Cordell Patterson, unfortunately.
Yeah.
He is on the roster. Real quick, before we move on, Greg, want to ask you your thoughts on Kyle Pitts, Greg. Let's say we do go a lot of 12. You get Hayden Hurst on the field with Pitts, and I would imagine Ridley and Gage. I could argue that Kyle Pitts could be clearly the number 2 option in the passing game. Your thoughts on their ability to get him the ball early in the career, high percentage type of passes. Can he, I mean, I'm not going to say plug and play and replace Julio, but how much of the lost production, if they do in fact lose Julio, can Kyle Pitts replace?
Oh, he'll replace a lot. They didn't draft him at 4. He's going to be out there right away. He's going to play meaningful snaps, John.
Yeah.
And they, as Adam said, they have a plan. They're going to move him around. They're going to play a lot of, let's assume Julio's gone. They're going to play a lot of 12 personnel. And because of Pitts, it can look like 11 personnel. It can look like 22 personnel. Pitts is going to be a major factor, John.
Yeah. Adam, would you be shocked if Kyle Pitts opened it up right out of the gate? Week 1, 8, 9 targets every week.
Philly? Yeah, against Philly in Atlanta.
No, I'm just generally, though. Right out of the gate, 8, 9 targets.
Again, if you just look at pass target group, right? Ridley will be number 1. If Jones is traded, Pitts has got to be number 2. Hayden Hurst fades. As you and I've talked about him. He's just he's not the most physical player. He's a pretty good athlete, but
He did
doesn't
catch
commit-
56 balls a year ago.
Yeah, I know, but I can
Yeah.
just tell you from talking to teams that played him, Greg, he's too much of a finesse player.
Yeah, but the point is, within the context of Atlanta,
right, he ain't going to be number.
back.
I'm going to tell you this: Pitts will be number 2. John, to answer your question, as long as he knows what he's doing, he'll be the number 2 passing target. That should happen.
Offensive line, somewhat still intact. Not great, underwhelming. Didn't really help it all that
A
much.
lot of
Maybe
high
some-
round picks.
Yeah, they're just there. They're not bad. They're not good. They're just kind of there. Although, Greg, in pass pro, maybe they are bad, right? I mean, Matt Ryan is always under siege.
Well, they also had to throw the ball a lot last year because of their defense, so that factors in as well.
Yep. Moving on, let's talk Carolina Panthers. Very intriguing team here. Greg, I'll go to you. And we all know about Sam Darnold. I've asked you about Sam Darnold a million times. I've asked you some form of this question in the past. We know that he doesn't process real well. He does have mechanical, flaws from the waist down, seems to unravel. Hopefully he gets good coaching. I think we should all have a lot of confidence in Matt Rule and Joe Brady. How much can Sam Darnold be helped by environment, which I mean, good skill players around him, Matt Rule, that whole culture, Joe Brady, scheme it up. How much of his deficiencies can be masked, if you will, by environment?
Well, clearly, with a healthy McCaffrey, this team's going to run the ball. The Jets could not do that. So Darnold's in a different situation in terms of the structure of the offense. Now, ideally, those issues, those mechanical issues, those field vision at times issues are also worked on. I guarantee the Jets worked on them as well. Adam Gase became an easy whipping boy for everybody, but those things do get worked on by coaches. The question is, can Darnold take the practice to the field and games? Up to this point, he struggled with that, so we don't know. But the point is, they can run a totally different offense than the Jets had to run because they've got McCaffrey. They drafted Hubbard in the 4th round for a reason. They're going to run the football. They've got a lot of weapons on the outside, but this is not going to be a shotgun, let's toss it all over the yard team, because Darnold can't function that way. And ultimately, Matt Rule does not want to play that way.
What do
Back
you
to
think
you,
of
Greg.
Darnold's arm? Real quick, Greg, what do you think of Darnold's arm strength?
It's good. It's not elite.
Right.
He's not a power thrower, but Darnold can make every throw.
Good.
Snap it off pretty well.
Yep.
Terrace Marshall, Greg, I
him.
think in Carolina, what they want to do is line these guys up all over the place. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Terrace Marshall is a guy you could probably do that with right out of the gate, line them up anywhere, even including the slot. As you've mentioned, those lines are getting blurrier and blurrier. There's no longer, more often than not, the prototypical slot receiver, the small 5'9" guy.
No, and Marshall did that in college. He lined up in the slot. He lined up at boundary X. He lined up in the inside slot to trips. He was used as a motion receiver. Marshall's got a lot of talent. He's long, he's fluid, he's an easy mover, but there's some suddenness to him. To me, I think it won't happen this year because of who else they have, but I think he's got the ability, and I don't know his mindset, so I don't know the kid, but I think he's got the ability to develop into a volume 1 kind of receiver down the road.
Yep. That's a real nice pick there. And I also real quick like Shi Smith. I read your profile at the fantasypoints.com draft guide, the app still for sale, by the way, if you'd like to check that out. And we do have the promo code up on the Zoom here if you'd like to take advantage of the early bird special here. But Shi Smith, Greg, when I read your overview, I thought of Jamison Crowder and Sam Darnold, in the slot. I know he's not quite as electric as Crowder, but
right.
I think the route running and the reliable hands, Sam Darnold may gravitate toward this guy at some point.
Well, this kid's really physically tough and competitive. He almost plays like Steve Smith in terms of his competitiveness.
Wow.
He's not that kind of player, in terms of traits, physical traits, but that he's that competitive. He's more straight line than laterally explosive. He's not a loose hip guy. You don't think of him running those pivot routes, those whip routes, those juke routes. That's not really him. He's a little more straight line. I wouldn't say he's explosive, but he's got really good hands. And as I said, he's super competitive and he catches the ball.
Yeah, I think I actually think he has a chance to, be their fourth receiver for what it's worth, maybe even over David Moore. We shall see about that. Little Dan Arnold. He'll get targeted, he'll have like 4 big games. We have no idea when, but there's a guy that they can, take some big plays down the field. Adam, what do you think of when you look at this offensive line though? Is it prohibitive? Can it just be mediocre? Like just don't stink? Where are you with this O-line? Because that would be, if anything is their downfall this year offensively, it has to be, other than injuries, this O-line.
Yeah, I mean, it's better. Elfline's a guy they actually, I think their O-line coach, from what I understand, really wanted him in there. They like him. They liked him for the draft when Minnesota drafted him. It just didn't work out there. But they have one issue. It's left tackle. It's an absolute disaster. Cam Irving is not a starting left tackle. I mean, he's a decent 6 offensive lineman. It won't be Greg Little. I could bet the house it will not be Greg Little. Greg may know about Brady Christensen. I don't know if he'll be ready or not, but you got a right-handed thrower's blind side. That would be the one concern, left tackle.
Yeah, just another guy we should mention, because I think, we talked about this team running the football, is they drafted Tommy Tremble. And he's an unbelievably good blocking tight end. Unbelievably good, and actually has athletic ability to develop into a quality receiving tight end. But he will be kind of an H-back, fullback blocking tight end, and he will knock your face mask off. This kid is a phenomenal blocker. So this is going to be a running football team. Just, John, so I know they have a ton of weapons.
Yeah.
I don't know how that'll exactly map out in terms of targets, but they're going to start with the run game.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Ultimately, eventually, as our guy Ron Jaworski always says, points come out of the passing game. We're going to need those guys on the outside, the receivers, but we know where they're going to start and hopefully finish offensively by running that rock.
We should mention that Robbie Anderson's on the last year of his deal, so that's where Terrace Marshall comes in.
Yeah,
he may wind up taking this job next year. Now, I will tell you from talking to Carolina, they're actually pretty happy with Robbie. He's done everything right off the field, no issues. He's been healthy. And the one thing I will tell you, John, you and I talked about this, Greg knows this. Teddy Bridgewater would not throw the ball downfield. That's why Anderson's yards per catch was so low. I mean, he got open sometimes. Teddy wouldn't throw it downfield. I don't think that's based on what Greg said about Arnold's arm, because those throws are going to be there in Brady's offense.
Darnold can throw it down.
Right. So I would expect, based on what Greg just said, I would expect Robbie Anderson's big plays to come back where they weren't there last year. He became also a possession receiver. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to change this season.
Greg, do you agree with that? Because, I watched it early and it did seem like they wanted to use Robbie on those shallow crossers and the like near the line of scrimmage and utilize his run after.
Well, you got to play to your quarterback, John.
Yeah.
In your pass game, you got to play to your quarterback. So, I mean, we can sit here from a fantasy standpoint and say, oh boy, Robbie Anderson, what's the problem? But you got to play to your quarterback in the pass game. Darnold's issues are not a function of his, and I hate to use this phrase because I've been trying to figure out how to better describe what it means when I talk. But Darnold's issues are not arm talent, and I know that's a cliche, but Darnold can make the throws. He's got a much better, Teddy Bridgewater has just an average arm, probably an average arm at best.
Yeah. That said, DJ Moore did make a decent number of downfield plays, 18 yards a catch. Graham,
he had a lot of run after catch too.
Yeah. Graham, where are you with DJ Moore? I feel like his first 3 years in the league, I know in your Stat Pack article, it was like, what was it, like 18th all time, over 3,000 yards. The quietest start to a career, really. We've seen in a little while. He doesn't get a lot of buzz, but I do like him quite a bit. I think he's an absolute baller.
Well, what's funny is, we would think of Robbie Anderson as the deep threat in this offense, but it was actually DJ Moore last year. Moore's
no doubt.
Moore's average depth of target was like around like the DK Metcalf, Chase Claypool range, which is crazy. And by the way, Robbie Anderson caught like the quietest 95 balls ever last year. Dude caught 95 balls. But I think what's interesting to me, and I think the biggest question right now we have for this team is who plays the slot. Because Sam Darnold, I know Scott has written and talked about this, like Sam Darnold targets his slot receivers like crazy. And sure, it was a little bit of a function of, the Jets offense and Jamison Crowder was being their best receiver for a number of years, et cetera. But I think, if DJ Moore lines up in the slot more this season than last year, because he was typically an outside boundary receiver. Samuel was in the slot like 70% of the time, and Moore was only in the slot like 20%. If we get Moore in the slot like 50% of the time in this offense and moved around a little bit more, he's been a great receiver too for fantasy, but that might be what gets him into the receiver one range is just, running more routes in Darnold's hot zone and probably picking up a few more targets when he does so.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up Shi Smith, by the way. That's why I've kind of been interested in him. Although I think initially they're going to line up all over the place with Moore, Anderson, and Marshall lining up all over. But good point about Moore in that slot. Joe, number one pick of the draft overall, 100% Christian McCaffrey, or is it more like, like 9 times out of 10 you'll go McCaffrey?
Yeah, I was trying to be a little cute earlier in the offseason because I really love Dalvin Cook's situation in Minnesota. And I love the player, but just listening to Greg and Adam talk, McCaffrey is just going to be utterly peppered with targets and carries, and the opportunity is going to be there.
Yeah, check downs for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be everything. So, yeah, I would say 9 times out of 10, I'd take McCaffrey. Now, if I kept drawing, John, like you said, the number one pick in a best ball, I definitely would mix in a Cook here or there. But yeah, so I don't think it's as staggering as maybe the projections have it, but like McCaffrey is the best bet.
Before we move on, Greg, give us your overview quickly on this defense. I see some intriguing names. I think they need to come all together here, but Burns, I think, can get to the quarterback, maybe not consistently. Yatir Gross-Matos, last year's draft pick, Derek Brown, Shaq Thompson. They had Reddick. They had, of course, J.C. Horn, Jeremy Chin.
Well, it appears based on the people they signed that they're going to transition to a little more conventional use of personnel, because last year they were a 3 safety defense. Based on what they've signed, Hassan Reddick, Denzel Perryman, it looks like they'll become, more of a true 4-3 as a base, right. Depending on how much they play that. The other thing I would say is drafting Horn and actually a corner that I liked, Keith Taylor, in the 5th round. They are both man-to-man corners. Mm-hmm. So they played a ton of zone last year. It would not surprise me to see them transition to playing more man coverage based on who they drafted.
You're watching the fantasypoints.com 2021 virtual powwow, part 2 of the series here. Next week, we'll cover the AFC. We've already covered the NFC East and the NFC North. You can check that out on YouTube and on the website if you missed that. We go to the New Orleans Saints. And Adam, you've been kind of leading the charge on this one.
I'm alone.
I know it's early. It does feel like a little momentum here for Taysom. You're still in on Taysom Hill winning this job. I agree. Why?
Yeah. Look, you could do more with Taysom Hill. I'm not talking about as a running back, but he's more mobile. You got the second reaction ability, which is, you're talking to quarterback coaches. They like that as a bonus, because when the pocket breaks down, you got to be able to move. And this is certainly an issue for Jameis compared to Hill. And they've had Taysom Hill since late in 2017. This is their chance. Why did they invested all this time and money in this player to he really should be out there, but I know that they like Jameis, John, as I told you in December. They're behind the scenes. They like him very much. And I'm a little bit surprised with Ian Book. They drafted him as high as they did, but based on what I know about him. But getting back to Hill, it's going to be close. They're going to take it through training camp, and we'll see. But I just think that overall, Hill gives him a little bit more juice.
Greg, give us your overview of what you saw from Taysom Hill throwing the ball. Decent arm, obviously the legs. He's got 2 of them, actually. It's impressive. But, did he look like a professional quarterback to you? Or did he look like a guy who's kind of been a gadget player who just was thrown in there and let's see what we have in Taysom Hill?
No, I think he looked like a professional quarterback, albeit one who continues to need work, which is not unsurprising. But he did not look like a gadget guy. Keep in mind that Sean Payton does a really good job with his offensive design and concepts and schemes. So he did a really good job of defining reads and throws for Hill. Hill executed. And then, as Adam said, a lot of coaches have come to believe that second reaction ability is more critical than it was prior. And he certainly gives you that. So it would not surprise me, and I have no inside information. It would not surprise me if he won the job.
Yep. And Graham, if that's the case, could you make an argument that Taysom Hill is the value pick at the quarterback position for fantasy?
Oh yeah. I mean, Taysom, for the limitations he has as a passer, I mean, those 3 starts he made last year, whatever it was, I mean, he was not only highly involved on, they're just kind of design stuff in between the 20s, but I mean, he was taking like legit, goal line carries. Last night I did a cut line draft with the NFFC guys, and I actually took both Saints quarterbacks late. And my thinking is like, I just basically encapsulate whatever I get out of the Saints quarterback. Whoever starts, I'll have that as my QB2. I actually took Lance in that draft too, and I kind of regret it now because I ended up getting both of them. But yeah, I love Taysom and Jameis late, especially if you're, if you took a top 8, top 10 quarterback in your draft. I mean, both of those guys have, QB1 ceilings. It just depends on who makes the starts. But I think I've come around. I thought it was Jameis, and I think you guys have convinced me. I think we'll see. They'll give Taysom the first shot.
The other thing to keep in mind, John, is they have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. It's arguably a top 3 O-line. So, that's a really good starting point.
And that, it's good and pass pro, obviously here with Ramczyk and Armstead, but pretty damn good blocking for the run too. And that'll help Taysom Hill when he takes off and runs.
Yeah. And, and I think for Sean Payton, given the way he thinks, Hill just expands the offense in a lot of ways that obviously Winston can't do. So, I feel pretty comfortable that it's going to be Taysom Hill.
All right.
I hope you're right, because the great thing, Greg, is the internet thinks it's going to be Jameis, and I'm getting kind of a laugh. I mean,
hey,
nobody knows. It's actually wide open.
I don't have any inside info.
I don't either.
I'm just trying to think, understanding Sean Payton, when I've talked with him through the years, but understanding the way he thinks, we know that he's an offensive guy. We know that he's really good with design and scheme. And I think Hill just gives him a lot more options.
Real quick, he made 4 starts last year. In 3 of those, he completed over 70% of his passes.
Yeah.
I mean, they are that Payton, to your point, Greg, Payton is so good at scheming up just easy throws. And
yeah,
I remember that game against Atlanta. I mean, he threw like 8 straight slants to Michael Thomas, and they all went for like 9 to 10 yards. But I mean, he was open every single time. So I mean, this is going to be a highly schemed offense.
Yeah, I mean, right. And it's easy to say, John, as we know, when you look at their receivers, other than Michael Thomas, who ideally is healthy for the whole season, you start to say, okay, who are the guys? And that's a legitimate question. And I can't answer that, so don't ask me. But the point is they don't have, great players on the outside, but it's a very well schemed offense.
John, keep this in mind, by the way. If it's Taysom, and then this gets into how we rank our running backs at the top of the board. Alvin Kamara averaged 4 targets per game in Taysom's 4 starts at quarterback. He averaged 8.5 targets per game in the other 11 games. So, we always talk about these mobile quarterbacks who will take off and run, not necessarily great for receiving backs. Kamara did have a 10-target game against Philly with Taysom at quarterback, but he also had games of 1, 2, and 3 targets. He actually was held without a reception in one of his games with Taysom as a starter. And, for somebody who's a really damn good receiver, and Alvin Kamara's produced as a receiver for us for fantasy, I would be a little concerned if Taysom's the starter there.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be worked on. Because they're not going to let Kamara not exist.
They
paid him too.
Yeah.
I've noticed that. That's why I'm a little bit lower on Kamara, Joe. All the reasons you pointed out. But yeah, I have to think that, when Hill was starting, it was the middle of the year. He doesn't have that chemistry that Breeze had with Kamara. I think that'll come up, but I do think there's certainly some signal there, because like running quarterbacks typically don't throw to their backs as much as we want them to. I mean, if you look through the history of all the greatest running quarterbacks, their targets to their backs and checkdowns is just not there because they're, if their first, second, third read isn't there, they're running. They're not checking down to the back.
Sure.
So I think there is something there to Hill vis-a-vis Winston.
Yeah, and for Michael Thomas, it does help with Taysom Hill because Breeze threw the running backs 29% of the time, Graham, as you pointed out in your stat pack, whereas Taysom only threw it 20% of the time. A lot of those extra targets went to Thomas.
Yep.
In the 3 games in which Taysom Hill threw it 20 or more times, Thomas had 31 targets, 26 catches, 293, 85% catch rate. That was pretty darn good. Greg, Adam Troutman at tight end taking over. I was a little surprised by what he did last year. It may not look like much in the box score or on the stat sheet here. I believe he only had like 16 catches, 15 grabs, but I thought he was quite impactful at times. I thought he made a couple of plays, maybe one a game where I'm like, oh wow, okay, the kid can run. I know it's not a sample size that you could talk a lot about, but did you see anything out of Adam Troutman?
I mean, I think he's a good athlete, and I think that he'll become a factor in the pass game. The question is how much. We don't know the answer to that. But Nick Vinette's been around, and he's a nice, solid tight end, but hasn't put up big numbers as a receiver. So they did draft Troutman in the 3rd round. I would expect him, assuming with good offseason, good camp, to become much more of a factor. John.
Yeah, John. Just so you know, Vinette was signed to be their wide tight end. Talking to someone who's involved in this decision, and then Troutman will be sort of their move guy.
Yep.
Could he block at all, Greg Troutman?
That I can't answer, so I don't want to just make it up. But
okay.
But he's a pretty good athlete. He's a pretty good athlete.
I thought it was a pretty good sign. Like they got him the ball. Like he was involved pretty early. I didn't expect really anything from him last year with Jared Cook on the roster, but he did a few more things than I thought he would. Granted, he caught 15 to 16 targets. That's not bad at all. That's a 94% catch rate. Adam, in terms of the rest of the receiving core, what's your feeling? Do they piecemeal this thing together? You work in a Marquez Callaway.
I'll tell you what, they paid him a couple things on Callaway. They gave him a significant signing bonus as an undrafted free agent. They were strong, very strong on him. And, he had 2 separate knee injuries last season, but they do like him. I have to find out where they're going to let him compete against Traquan Smith for that job opposite Thomas. Then the other question is, and we don't know this yet. I mean, we'll try to find out. Without Breeze now, are they more 12 personnel? Are they more 11 personnel? Does that change? I don't know. I'm curious. With Jared Cook gone, do they change things up with that, with those formations?
Back to you, Greg. Traquan, as Adam mentioned, I call him like Mr. Individual Play. Have you seen anything? We know the kid's got size and he can run, but did you see anything last year that led you to believe, okay, this kid is growing, expanding? He did fill in pretty well for Michael Thomas at times.
No, I think that we know what Smith is, John. I mean, I don't know if he's a volume receiver. I don't think he is. I actually find Callaway, who I did when he came out of Tennessee 2 years ago, to be really, really interesting. I mean, he was a big-time recruit at Tennessee. He actually came out of Georgia as a top 10 safety recruit and a top 15 athlete recruit. So he's very athletic. He's big. He's physical. Playing off what Adam said, it would not surprise me if Callaway became more of a factor in this pass game.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I'm sure he's a free pick in all formats. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he caught 50 balls. I mean, I remember that first game that he kind of was like a featured guy. I remember liking him, and I believe he caught, a good number of passes actually. So yeah.
I mean, don't forget, he's just still learning how to play receiver because of what he was in his background, but there's something about him I liked on tape. I mean, he has size. He showed a lot of flashes in college. He's got a powerful looking body.
Yeah. Kind of played a little skinnier than he was too at times. I mean, he's a pretty big kid, but he didn't seem like a lumbering kind of a bigger guy. Anybody have anything else here on these New Orleans Saints? They've got a bunch of, actually, I don't know, Greg, you didn't see that kid Kawan Baker, by the way?
No.
Okay, because he was somewhat intriguing out of South Alabama. That's a name to keep an eye on. But anybody else have anything else? Latavius Murray he's back again. Once again, they don't really do much in the backfield. Anything else before we move on?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's head to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and
They're all back.
they're all back. They're all good.
This backfield, though, is fascinating. I got to tell you, they have too many running backs.
They do way too many.
So I'm really interested to see. And did they really need to sign Giovanni Bernard? I don't know why. I mean, I guess.
Well, Adam, I'll tell you exactly why. They've been looking for a pass catcher.
Yeah,
dating back
that's
to
what
last
I was going to
summer.
say. Yeah,
and Leonard and Ronald Jones both had ugly moments in pass pro and with the sloppy hands. So, Greg, that's it, right? Yeah. I mean, Gio's a savvy receiver, specialty player all the way, and he's actually very good in pass pro. So, assuming he makes the team, that's going to be their third down back, Greg.
I can't see Keyshawn Vaughn, forget it. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Well, I mean, Fournette's, I don't know. I don't know how they're going to map all this out. I really don't know the answer to that.
But you know what's funny though, John? With Fournette, the Bucks, when he was with the Jaguars, he was their best pass protector. That's why he was in on third down.
Yeah.
Now you're talking that he didn't block as well last year, and that may be true. Gio at this point is obviously specialty back, which will be third down. And I could see that. I mean, I could see Jones and Fournette splitting the early down roles. Bernard seeing some time of third down. Keyshawn Vaughn and CJ Procise out of the mix.
But Graham, let me go to you because I believe you kind of like Lenny this year. And my problem is simply this: when you have Ronald Jones in the mix there, and Bruce Arians likes Ronald Jones ran better than Leonard. So to me, the crux of the matter was Leonard's role in the passing game, basically, which is probably going to take a hit with Gio. That's a problem for me.
Yeah, I got to say, like, it's only for best ball. I mean, Fournette's like going in the 9th or 10th round right now, and typically Rojo goes like up, ahead of him a couple times. Really, it's only for best ball. I don't really want any of these guys for season long.
Thank goodness you said that.
Yeah,
thank God.
I mean, I like Fournette for best ball. I mean, I think he's going to have some RB1 weeks. Same with Rojo.
He'll have a big lead plenty of times.
Yeah. I mean, he'll have his 2 touchdown games, but for season long, I don't really want to touch any of these backs.
I want to throw this out to Greg though, because obviously, Greg, you studied the Buccaneers a ton last year.
Yep.
When you watch them in the playoffs with Fournette foundationally as a running back, could you get the sense that the offense was just operating a little bit better? We have the running backs don't matter discussion, but the run game surely does.
Yeah, I know it. And Joe, let me interject because it's a cliche, run the ball and all that, but it seemingly that was exactly what they did, and it worked.
I mean, it worked really well.
Well, there's a difference between saying running backs are interchangeable and don't matter, but the run game matters. Those are two different statements. So they obviously made Fournette the guy in the playoffs. I mean, it wasn't as if the offense ran through him, but they obviously made him the number one runner, and he executed what he was asked to execute. I don't think they're going to become a running football team in the sense that the offense will run through Leonard Fournette, but most NFL teams, almost all, they want to run the ball and they want to have success when they run the ball. So the run game matters. The question is for teams, who's the back who's going to get the majority of the carries? It's likely to be Leonard Fournette.
Greg, I think the run game matters a little bit more for a guy like Brady when you don't have that second reaction ability.
Right.
Just keep that pass rush at bay, right?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Arians too is old school. I mean, he believes that offense should be balanced, which a lot of coaches believe, by the way, that offense should be balanced, that you have to be able to run the ball. Balance is a relative term, so no coach sits here and says, well, we want to run it this many times and throw it this many times, but they want to be able to run the football. And when you look at this, as Adam said, they've got too many backs. They're not all making the team. But I think when you look at this group, particularly with what happens in the playoffs, they're going into this season. Leonard Fournette will be the primary back as a rusher.
How did Antonio Brown look to you on film, Greg? I thought he looked great. I was not shocked, but I was a little surprised that he was able to basically step out of bed and catch 73% of the targets. Looked like he was always open. Like maybe he knew only 3 routes, but he was open.
Yeah, I mean, I think he looked fine. This is an offense that obviously spreads it around. It's not one guy. I thought the really intriguing pick was Jalen Darden in the 4th round because I love Jalen Darden's tape. Jalen Darden is very much like Jalen Waddle. They're very similar players in terms of skill set. Waddle's a little more explosive, but Darden played at North Texas, obviously a lower level school, so the competition wasn't as good. But that's a fascinating pick to me.
Boy, if he pans out, now you go 7 deep at wide receiver in Tampa. And
well, again, they're not all making the team either, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and you got 17 tight ends as well. OJ Howard, Greg, could bring a little bit of a new wrinkle here, like big plays even on the outside. That could be a little bit of a shift with OJ Howard a full year.
He's coming off an injury. We'll see. They've got tight ends too. I mean, not everybody's making the team here, so this is going to be a little hard right now at the end of May, John, to figure out exactly how this is all going to work out.
O-line, all 5 starters are back, right?
Yep.
How impressed was this O-line? Had a couple of rough spots in pass pro, particularly against New Orleans, Greg, but you watched all the tape there, and was
it's
it
a solid O-line? The O-lines, they got better and better as the season progressed. Brady was comfortable in the pocket for the most part. He threw the ball extremely well over the last 8-9 weeks. He was not under meaningful duress over the last part of the season. This is a solid O-line.
Well, I don't think we have much. Oh, Mr. Brady, how better did he get down the stretch in your mind, Greg? Because, he did say recently that didn't even really know the offense when the season started last year, which is a little scary.
Out, he had knee surgery. He had a pretty with a bad knee.
Right.
Well, we're going to see him on television here in July. They just announced he's playing one of those made-for-TV golf events with Phil Mickelson. So he seems all right to be playing in that.
Greg, and anything of note, good or bad, with Tom? I guess it's kind of like
Tom Brady.
Yeah, it's kind of like
played really, really well down the stretch. Now, he didn't have a great game against the Packers, but they won the game. But overall, he threw the ball really well. I can see some throws in my mind's eye right now from watching all these games, during the season, where I just went, wow, that's a really big time throw. He's always had a better arm than people think he's had. There's nothing wrong with Tom Brady.
I would even, I might even take it a little step further, Greg. I know you and I talked about it after the game. I think it was a play where he was moving to his right and he threw a laser across his body. It may have been to Evans. It may have been to Godwin, but.
Well, he threw a ball against Atlanta to Mike Evans, where Evans got tackled at the 1-yard line.
I think that's it.
I can see this play right now because I looked at it 100 times. And it was against 2-man coverage. Okay. Which is man coverage with 2 deep safeties. And he just drilled this. I mean, this was on a frozen rope.
Yep.
It was a really, really good throw. There's nothing wrong with Brady.
I mean, I thought that throw there, his arm strength looked like he turned back the clock at like a decade.
Yeah. And we know what his off-season regimen is, It's just like Adam's off-season regimen, right?
I'm down 25 pounds here, brother. Come on.
Are you really?
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Tennis is saving my life. Go ahead.
Wow. So are you now running a 4.40?
I could probably get under 6.
Wait
a minute. Hang on.
I'm not talking about the first 20 yards.
Yeah, very funny. Wait, didn't you not tell us on our show or in an interview somewhere? Did you not say you ran what did you run in high school or college?
No, it was my freshman year in college. We got time for baseball. I ran a 4.840.
Can you believe it? Looking at him, he ran a 4.8.
Solid.
Can you believe that?
Hey, you know how much I weighed my freshman year in college?
180.
165.
Like 180, 185.
Yeah, see?
Which I don't weigh now, by the way.
Looking at you, I cannot believe you're an athlete. Unbelievable.
Oh, cut the crap.
Look at Adam bragging about the weight loss. Never mind the fact that he was fat, basically.
Thank you very much.
We don't need my athletic exploits here, but
you got a sweet jump shot though. That picture in your office, I digress, but that I'll tell you what, that is form.
That's about as sweet as it gets.
It is.
Yeah.
All right.
I think we're done with Tampa, guys. Anybody have anything else here?
And their defense, for fantasy, John, they're all back. Joe, Greg, did you like Joe Tryon the first round pick?
Love Joe Tryon.
Yeah, that was a great pick.
Love Joe Tryon more than Gregory Rousseau. I don't even think
Oh
there's
wow.
Wow.
I don't even think there's a conversation
Yeah.
about that.
Tell you what, for fantasy, I know that these fantasy defenses are so up and down. Yeah, the second half of the season they play much better. I'll tell you what, I think they'll be very good for fantasy.
Oh, they were my number one defense last year, and I did the projections and plugged in the numbers, and they came in at number one.
They're all
I mean,
back, literally all of them. Sue resigned.
they're going to get sacks. They're going to get picks. Maybe not a ton of big plays, but
they're
right
getting
there,
back
that's
a couple
good
guys who
starting
were
point.
hurt last year. Yeah, they're going to be good.
There's a lot of actually good fantasy defenses this year.
Yeah,
they'll
but
probably all break our hearts.
Tryon, that was a great pick for me because, Pierre Paul's getting older.
Yep.
You don't know what he'll be. I mean, I love Joe Tryon. I mean, he didn't play this year, so I watched him last summer, and I watched a lot of games because it was a guy I knew nothing about, and I just started watching. Washington always puts out defensive players in the NFL, so they're a defense you always want to watch because they've got a really good defensive coach who's now the head coach, Jimmy Lake. He does a really, really nice job, and so they're very good schematically, and they have a lot of good players.
This might be the best depth I've ever seen, honestly, top to bottom.
I know they don't really have. I mean, Greg, you look at the roster. I don't think they have a weakness, do they?
Oh no.
As I'm looking through the roster,
Not a corner.
Yeah, I mean, Murphy Bunting rebounded really well the second half of the season.
And I've talked with Todd Bowles. He loves big corners, and he's got big corners.
Carlton Davis,
Dean, and Murphy Bunting are all 6 feet and over, and Davis and Dean are about 6'2", and they're very physical. He likes that. Obviously, they got Levante David and Devin White. I mean, those guys were major factors in their playoff run.
Oh God, yeah. Adam, you know what their biggest problem is? Backup quarterback. That's it.
Well, just as Bill Polian said, you only need a backup quarterback when you need one, and generally.
Well, they got Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah, who Bruce loves. Bruce.
And by the way, Bruce loved Kyle Trask.
Yeah,
because he fits his worldview of what the quarterback position is.
Yeah, they're all good until they have to play. That's the issue that people find out. But they're the kid Stinney played well on the offensive line when he had to fill in. They said Cap is back from his injury. They're all back, John. This is.
They also drafted a kid, Robert Hainsey, in the 3rd round from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Who I watched. He played right tackle in college. I think he's a guard personally in the NFL. But the point is, I think he's a solid prospect.
Okay. Good. All right.
FantasyPoints.com virtual powwow number 2 continues here, covering the NFC. You see the promo code there on the little screen, if you will, at the top. And if you're not a subscriber to FantasyPoints.com, go ahead and then take advantage of that 10% off discount here as we move on to the NFC West. And we start with the Arizona Cardinals. Greg, your thoughts on year number 2 for Kyler Murray? You and I have discussed this.
Number 3.
Right. What's that?
Yeah, you're number 3. You mean third with King? Is it third with Kingsbury?
Yeah.
Third with Kingsbury. Yeah.
We've discussed Kyler Murray in the past, Greg.
He's a great fantasy player.
Yeah.
And we keep hoping he'll become a great quarterback, but he's a great fantasy player.
Right. Well, that's what I was talking about. Year 2. It was year 2 last year. Was year 2. That's where I was going with that.
And his running, they are so good with design run concepts in the red zone from the 20 in. And that's one of the reasons he's such a good fantasy player. They're so good with their design run concepts. He scores touchdowns running the ball.
With ease in the red zone. With ease.
That's my point. Yeah, that's
exactly.
That's schemed really, really well. They're really good at that.
No doubt about it. But I'm a little underwhelmed with Kyler Murray, the quarterback.
I think here's what you're going to see, John. I mean, and then I don't want to be the only one talking here, but then other people can chime in. But given what they did, in free agency and the draft, I think Kingsbury wants to go back to his roots. Don't forget, coaches coach what they know. And what Kingsbury grew up with is the air raid. And that's what he knows. And the air raid has 4 wide receivers. Now, they played 4 wide receivers last year, the second highest percentage in the league behind Buffalo. But to me, I think Kingsbury wants that to be his foundational personnel package.
I mean, look at all those receivers, Greg. It's crazy.
They signed AJ Green. Say what you want. Look, I'm not making it's John's job to project. I don't know if AJ Green's catching 70 balls. Maybe he's not. But the point is, they signed him. So they're going to have Green, Hopkins, Kirk, they didn't draft Rondell Moore in the second round to sit on the bench. So I think they're going to be much more of a 10 personnel offense.
Which they were back in 2019 when Kyler was throwing it to guys like Keyshawn Johnson and Trent Sherfield, and it wasn't bad.
And by the way, they also have Andy Isabella. So assuming Larry Fitzgerald retires, they're still super deep. And Greg's right. They're absolutely going to be a 4 receiver offense, and tight ends there are there to block. They're not going to catch very many passes.
I mean, Max Williams isn't a bad receiver, but I mean, this is not going to be. They played 12 personnel last year, in my view. Again, I'm trying to get into Cliff Kingsbury's head. In my view, they played it way more than he really would like to.
So I was not overly impressed though with Kyler throwing the football. Where were you with that?
He's erratic. He can make unbelievable throws where you go, wow, because he's got a really good arm. And he does have touch and pace. And, in other words, he can do see, here's the definition of arm talent. Arm talent is making the right throw. Arm talent isn't just throwing it hard. When people say arm talent, I think people automatically think you're talking about a guy having a gun. Now, Murray does have a big arm in terms of arm strength, but he made some really good touch pace throws. He can vary speeds. He was just very erratic and at times scattershot with his ball location. He's got to become more consistent with that.
And at this point, Greg, if he doesn't really take a step forward, I think after 2021, then we could look at the height issue. I think that's got to be.
As long as Cliff Kingsbury is the coach, and again, we'll see where they go as a team. Obviously, they've addressed their defense big time in the last couple of drafts, so we'll see. But if they progress as a team, Kingsbury's not going anywhere, and Murray's not going anywhere.
Speaking of AJ Green, it's a little bit of a hedge, but I mean, the guy's not going to get 100 targets, most likely. I have him with 47 catches for 560. That's 11.9 yards a catch. I refuse to accept the narrative, Greg, that he mailed it in last year. I'm sure he was frustrated. I know separation was maybe not as good, but anything jump out to you on AJ Green, what you saw from him last year in Cincy?
Well, I thought that Adriel Jeremiah Green had moments last year where he looked pretty good.
Yeah.
And then there were other times where I thought, wow, he definitely lost something. So when I see that, I don't know what to make of it, because when you see the positive, I go, wow, this guy can still play. But then I can distinctly see plays in my head where I thought a little bit of the juice was gone. So look, I don't know him. My guess is he's had a pretty damn good career, that he probably has some intensity to him, because it's tough to play at that level that he did for so long without having some intensity, mental intensity and competitiveness. So I would think he signed here knowing that they're going to throw the football and that he's ready to come back. So I can't speak to what that means as a projection, John, but I would bet that he'll look pretty good.
Yeah, it's a little confusing, Adam, with Rondell Moore and AJ Green added. Christian Kirk, Isabella kind of on the outside looking in, and you would think Isabella is probably worse off.
Well, I think what you're going to see, John, is Green and Hopkins on the outside and Kirk and Moore on the inside. That's what I think they're going to line up with the majority of the time.
Yeah, I would think the fact that they drafted another slot receiver, it does not bode well for Isabella. Although I know in college he told us on NFL Radio he played on the outside.
Yep.
But here he was supposed to be a slot guy and he can't get on the field. I mean, it's in a sense they're giving up on him by drafting Moore. And I know Moore's a different body type. He's shorter. He's very compact and very strong for a guy who runs as well as he does. So, they're going to be a spread. I agree with Greg. I think he nailed it.
Moore is phenomenal run after catch, and that's what this offense is built on.
And he's built like a fire hydrant. He's
oh my God.
He's Mr. Olympia.
I mean, did you see his pro day when
I did? Well, I had a friend. I was a friend. They were actually was filming it, and he sent it to me.
Do you have a comp on Rondell Moore in your mind?
Rondell Moore is 5'7". There's really not a lot of comps.
Yeah.
He's another outlier, but he fits this offense.
How many snaps and targets would you imagine? He gets, like, they drafted him. Is he going to play half the snaps right out of the gate?
Tough call. That's a very tough call. I don't know.
I think that's the plan. I mean, again, it's always hard to know with a rookie, but I think that's the plan.
Fitzgerald needs to retire to help that happen.
Right. I think he will
happen.
retire, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
But
I mean, they've got
Larry
way
and I
too
haven't
many.
chatted about that, even though I know Larry. We haven't
Yeah.
discussed that recently.
Nothing here at tight end, which is not a tragedy.
They're not a tight end based team.
Yeah, Adam, the battle, I guess, between
It is. It's wide open.
Chase Edmonds and James Conner.
They've made it clear it's wide open. I was not very happy with Edmonds when he got extended playing time last year. I still think he's more of a changeup. They may think otherwise. Conner, we know about his injury history. He has versatility. He has size.
He's not a bad receiver either.
I know. Connor's always caught the ball well. Look, it could be just a two-man backfield. It could be a 60-40 split. We don't know yet because we're not there. They're not there yet. This competition will not be known until training camp once we get through it in the preseason. But Edmonds seems to be pretty energized. By the way, he's on the final year of his rookie deal. He's got a lot on the line here.
I don't really see it as a battle. It's more jockeying for position. 60-40 makes sense, Adam. And in that environment, I think you'd lean Conner 60, Edmonds 40.
Well, maybe he's built for it because he's done it before. Edmonds is not.
Well, they're also going to, again, if they go 4 wide, even though the dimensions of the field are different in the NFL due to the closer hash marks, they're going to look to spread the defense, try to get light boxes and work off that. That's what they're going to try to do. They're not going to line up as they did quite a bit actually 2 years ago with Kenyon Drake, where they lined up in 12 personnel and ran the ball conventionally. I think given what they've done a wideout, John, they're going to try to spread the field and play true air raid run game.
And in that environment, that could be great news for Chase Edmonds.
I would think so. But again, Adam's right. I'm not going to sit here and say Chase Edmonds is the guy because we don't know.
Right. Yeah, that is intriguing, though. Certainly James Conner has
They're an intriguing offense because Murray's got a ton of talent. He's been very erratic, but the talent is there. He's certainly comfortable in this offense. He played it in college, and 2 years in the league. So this is an intriguing. This could be a really good offense.
Defensively, anybody have anything of note here?
They've addressed sort of what has become important in the NFL, and we'll see how it plays out. The last 2 years with Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins, 2 multi-dimensional, multi-positional defenders who can line up theoretically in multiple spots. So they're trying to play defense in the way the NFL now demands that you play defense. And they get Chandler Jones back. And if he's normal, that guy, because of the fact he's been in Arizona the last number of years, that guy is a big time pass rusher.
Yep. Did Isaiah Simmons, did that year one work out?
I mean, he improved as the year went on. And I think they started to figure out what he is because, we've had this conversation 100 times. All these internet gurus, with guys like Simmons tell you, well, he's going to play 5 positions. Well, no, he's not. You got to learn how to play NFL football. So he's capable of that as he develops, as is Zaven Collins. But they've made Zaven Collins a stack backer right off the bat, and that's the position he's going to learn. So Simmons will play multiple positions this year, depending on the personnel package.
Let's move on. NFC West here. Oh boy, San Fran.
I was just going to say though, they're still very weak at corner. I know they addressed a couple in the draft, but the way you're going to beat them is you're going to throw against those corners. Alford hasn't really played in 2 years. Malcolm Butler is getting close to the end.
Oh, yeah, they are very weak.
So just want to mention that. So go ahead.
And that could help Kyler's pass attempts right there, just getting in some shootouts.
Yep.
San Fran, and the news came down last night about Jeff Wilson with the meniscus.
What happened to Jeff Wilson?
He had meniscus surgery, 4 to 6 months. My son had the same surgery. It pretty much ended his high school baseball career.
Adrian Peterson is the only running back that I know came back within 3 months.
So Jeff Wilson is likely out for 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, so you won't see him till probably mid-season. So now it's Mostert, it's Sherman, it's Hasty, and it's the gall of Wayne Gallman right now.
Boy, again, with Kyle, you never know because he plays a lot of backs and the system allows backs to be effective. It's always been that way, with Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan. I just really like Trey Sermon a lot. Now, John, I can't sit here and tell you Trey Sermon is going to get the bulk of the carries. No one, look, it's the end of May. No one can answer that question. So I'm not going to say that, but I think Sermon really fits Kyle Shanahan extremely well.
As well as, or better than anybody else here, like Mostert?
Overall, yes, but Mostert has way more juice,
Explosive.
vertical explosive juice.
Yep.
Right. What about Sermon's hands and
You
ability
got
to?
2 of them.
Yeah. Oh, great. Proud of him.
Not three.
Yeah.
But Mostert before, while he was hurt a lot, but Mostert did get a little bit more action in the passing game last year. Does Trey Sermon, is he an unnatural or natural, receiver?
I think he has receiving ability. As I recall, because I watched him in 2018 and 2019 at Oklahoma, just to show you how crazy I am watching these guys. He actually ran some vertical routes. I think I remember him running H seam, out of the backfield. So, I think that there's something there in that regard.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if he's, a big volume receiver.
Sure.
And he won't be in that offense, but I don't think he has bad hands.
That's all we needed to know. There's something there, because to your point, in 2018 at Oklahoma, he averaged 15 yards a catch. Granted, it was only 12 grabs, but still, that was probably one of those routes you mentioned.
I just really like him as a runner. I mean, again, I haven't, Kyle Shannon and I have not spoken about this, but I really like this kid as a back. And where did they draft him?
He was a 3rd round pick, and that's exactly what I was about to ask. Like Greg, you just mentioned, and Adam, you could chime in here as well. Kyle Shanahan his system has made backs. I mean, we're talking all the way back to Terrell Davis being a 6th round pick, Mike Anderson, Olandis,
Gary, I know it. Yeah.
When a team drafts, when knowing that you can take UDF, hell, they just did it with Mostert and Jeff Wilson. When you can take those guys and turn them into really good players, but on top of that, draft a running back in the 3rd round. What does that tell you they feel about this kid? Because to me, that sends the bat signal.
I mean, look, if you didn't know who Jeff Wilson was, okay?
Yeah.
And you watched him against New England, it was the game he got hurt late in the game last year when he hurt his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
But if you didn't know who he was and you watched that game, you would have said, this guy's a pretty damn good NFL back.
Right.
So, I mean, whether you want to say it's the system, whether it's your classic argument again about, hey, there's a lot of great backs, and if you run them a lot, they can all do, be okay. I mean, we're not going to get into that argument right now. But the point is they drafted Sermon in the 3rd round and Elijah Mitchell, who's really an intriguing player as well, in the 6th round. All these backs are not making the team. Sermon is, obviously. But, I mean, every back is not making the team. There's too many. But, these guys, I kind of really liked Elijah Mitchell's tape coming out of Louisiana.
I see, John, it's sort of a committee / roles. Like, okay, Mostert is obviously their explosive guy. Sermon might be an early down back. Hasty will be in the mix there. So it'll probably be a 3-man rotation is the way that I see it. I don't know that Goldman makes it. Do they really need to keep 4 backs? We'll see how healthy everybody is in training camp. And then, as Greg said, this Mitchell kid's interesting. You can't keep everybody. Wilson, we probably won't see him this season. So I think it's a committee, and it's.
I mean, depending on Wilson, they could put him on IR. And
say, right.
Yeah, but they could put him on IR. Put Jermichael Hasty on the practice squad.
Well, he'll be on.
They could just say, Wilson, hey, we'll see you next
year. He'll be on PUP, physically unable to perform. But the fact of the matter is, John, to figure it out for fantasy, I think it's going to be a rotation. Kyle's big on a rotation, and I don't know if they'll have a lead back. In fact, I would be very surprised if they did. I see it being a rotation between Mostert, Sermon, and Hasty.
In terms of the leader in the clubhouse, in terms of pass targets right now, I got to go Mostert.
Yeah.
Unless Gallman makes it and impresses in pass pro and receiving, I got to go Mostert there, even though he didn't catch the ball a ton 2 years ago when he broke out. He did more so last year. Adam, I'll go back to you. My position on the quarterback situation is I feel like the Niners obviously like Trey Lance quite a bit, but to me, they'd be more than fine if Jimmy G kept him on the bench all year.
Especially
Maybe
if
I'm wrong.
Right. Especially if they're getting all these guys back who were injured last season, COVID issues and everything. They were really devastated by it. So they should be, because we've got 7 playoff teams in each conference, they should absolutely be competing for a wild card spot. No question.
Now, if Jimmy G plays well, I think they're, again, great, but if he goes down, gets hurt, that's probably it, right? I mean,
yeah, well, that's just so you know, that this is exactly why they kind of said, okay, we've had enough.
Yeah. I know.
Kyle doesn't have patience. He's like his father. So they're going to move on after the season, and we'll see. This one, I would agree with. if they're winning, I don't see them pulling Garoppolo for Lance. I don't see that.
I got to say, I don't think you move up and trade away all those picks to go to 3 overall to let Trey Lance sit.
But it comes down to your record. I mean, if they're 0-3, there's your excuse to put the kid in. If they're 3-0, I don't think they're doing that.
I mean, it's a long-term investment too.
I kind of agree with Graham here, by the way. I mean, I'm
Wow.
not, I'm not going to sit here and say Trey Lance is the week 1 starter. I'm not going to say that. But I think if Trey Lance has a really good training camp, they gave up an awful lot.
Yeah.
That was their guy. I mean, you know, that again, we never know this, so I don't want anybody to say you're wrong. There's no right or wrong right now.
Yeah.
It's the end of May.
That's right.
But Trey Lance is a pretty talented kid, and he's, from what I've heard from people who know, and Adam's heard the same thing. I'm sure he's a super smart kid, like off the charts smart, a phenomenal leader, whatever that means. You know, you have to be with a guy every day to know that, but that's what you hear. So we'll see. We'll see. That's all I can say.
Let me ask you a question. Just one question on John for Greg on his mechanics. Talking to quarterback coaches, a lot of guys said to me, and offensive coaches in general who graded his tape, they thought he was the farthest away from a mechanical standpoint from being ready to go. Is that accurate? Not accurate? What were your thoughts?
I think his delivery was a little elongated. I think there were times where he had sort of a pause in his motion, not his motion per se, but when he hit the back foot, there was a pause. And in the NFL, you know, fractions matter. So I think that's something that you want to clean up. I don't think that is a major flaw. I think that can be cleaned up. The delivery is always a question because guys end up when, you know, when the game is going at speed, guys throw it the way they throw it. So then you have to decide what that means. Some guys, and Adam, you know, you and I don't talk to every single guy. We talk to a select group, and the group that we talk to, if that's the group that has issues with it, that's what we're told. So, are there some mechanical issues? Yes. Are they truly problematic? I would say no.
Greg,
I want to talk about
real
this.
quick. Greg,
Sorry,
they gave up a lot, obviously, for Lance, but I would argue it's, again, long-term investment. And as Adam said, they are just fed up with the lack of availability. But you have also told us recently that Jimmy Garoppolo does play extremely well in this system. So if Jimmy G's at his absolute best, this guy may complete 70% of his balls for like 8.5 yards an attempt.
But I know Kyle to some degree, okay? I'm not going to sit here and act like, you know, he's my best friend, but we've talked. And Kyle, like his dad, and like a lot of coaches, they are all about perfect execution. And I can guarantee this, and this doesn't come from Kyle. This is just me talking. I guarantee that to this day, Kyle is bothered by the Super Bowl in the fourth quarter, where he dialed up, and I'm not talking about the miss to Sanders. That's just an overthrow. Guys miss throws. But he missed 2 plays in the fourth quarter on third down. Well, one was second, one was third, where he dialed it up, a great design. And for whatever reason, Jimmy G went brain dead. And I guarantee that to this day, that's eating Kyle Shanahan up.
One thing that you know, even if Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't go brain dead, Greg, and you could, I mean, not just make the argument, it's a fact that if he doesn't, they win the Super Bowl. But one thing, even at his best, he's not giving this offense is the designed run game. At the quarterback position, and obviously Lance gives you that. Now,
and by the way, the designed run game works really well off of you know, your base run game concepts. We think of Kyle as being pure zone, but last year they incorporated much more gap scheme with pulling guards. So he's expanded the run game. I think he probably wants to expand the quarterback run game. And you know, when you draft Lance, that's what you're getting.
Right.
So they drafted Lance. I agree with Graham. They drafted Lance for a reason here. This is not just, let's see what happens in 2022. You know, it would not surprise me if Trey Lance plays this year meaningfully.
He'll play, but the question is, when do they pull the plug? And
we don't know the answer.
Yeah, the situation is very simply this. And I remember talking to the Seahawks in 2012. So they draft Russell Wilson to be their eventual starter. They didn't have any dreams of playing him year one, but he was so advanced when they got him to their OTAs in May, ironically, They were like, okay, let's just see if he can continue this. And once they got the second week training camp, it was over. They're like, why are we waiting? So yeah, sure. That same with Justin Fields. Okay. You just don't know till you get there. And then you have to recalibrate and have to make a tough decision, because you don't want to, when you're coaching, you guys know this, when you're coaching a quarterback, the only people who know are the people there. They're putting their jobs on the line. If they're going to pull the trigger early, they got to be right.
Well, Russell Wilson was advanced. He also played 4 years, 2 different schools, but still, he did play 4 years. Probably was a little older, and Trey Lance didn't play last year, or very few.
Yeah, he played one game and it wasn't very good, apparently.
It was like a scrimmage. I watched the tape.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I see both sides of the argument for sure, but Adam, the receiving core outside of Debo and Ayuk is pretty damn thin. So might they be in the Julio Jones conversation?
Yeah, look, Kyle. Actually, I saw this transcript of. I don't know if they were playing Atlanta like 3 years ago, but he was, pretty strong in his praise.
Well, he coached Julio.
No, I know that, but I'm talking about, he was asked about Julio Jones, and I don't know if they were playing him.
Only 1 year though.
Yeah. Right. But I don't know why he was talking about him, because they didn't, in the article, they weren't really setting it up why he was talking about. But anyway, his affection for the player and what Julio does to tilt coverage. As John, as I was telling you on Monday, Debo Samuel would be the odd man out to me. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean like they're not going to play him. But if you're going to be a 12 personnel offense, someone's not going to be on the field. I don't see how you take Ayuk off the field. I mean, he is so advanced. They'll figure it. Obviously,
I think the guy they're really hoping, and he's healthy now. And again, he's an unknown, but I think they're counting on Jalen Hurd.
To play, to be as a backup. Yeah, if they don't add Julio Jones, sure, yes.
Yeah, well, he'd be their slot guy, which is what he played his last year in college, and he was really good. He was a 3rd round pick.
Oh, I know. They took him.
He's a big dude, man.
I believe they took him over Terry McLaurin. Ugh.
Well, I don't know. Was it last summer?
Jalen Hurd went to college as a running back and as a true freshman in the SEC.
He is long.
Yeah. He gained over 1,200 rushing yards before he transitioned to wide receiver.
And they played him over Alvin Kamara, didn't they?
As the number 1 feature back, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
So they're counting on Hurd. That's what they drafted him for. I mean, it's unfortunately been 2 years that he's been hurt. And so, again, now you get into availability. But this kid's got some talent.
Also have Trent Sherfield. He's the new Kendrick Bourne, basically. Richie James actually looked pretty good in that one game he had to fill in there.
I actually really liked Austin Watkins' tape coming out of UAB. We'll see. We'll see.
He was undrafted, right?
Yeah, and he should have been. Yes. He was a draftable player without question.
Okay. Austin Watkins, UAB. Defensively, I mean, we get Verrett back.
Yeah, they're hurting at the other corner right now, which is why they drafted Ambry Thomas out of Michigan, who's really a very aggressive, competitive, feisty man-to-man corner. I can't sit here and tell you he's going to win the job, but that's why they drafted him.
And Verrett's a feisty man-to-man corner too, isn't he?
Oh, yeah, he had a good year last year, too. He's a good story.
That's a great
He's
story.
A super talent, Jason Verrett.
Oh, I thought he was phenomenal.
If he had again, you could say this about a lot of guys, I guess I'm allowed to say this because I was going to say if he didn't get hurt. My dad always used to say, if the queen had balls, she'd be the king, But if, Jason Verrett, to me, when he came out, I thought he had everything to be a great corner, and it's a shame he got hurt. But he had a really good year last year.
Adam, you think we'll see Nick Bosa on the field here week 1?
Shannon talked about it yesterday. I guess apparently he's doing really well, and it sounds like he'll be ready for training camp. Some sort of.
I would also expect Javon Kinlaw to really take a step forward. That kid's got a lot of talent.
Let's head on over to Seattle. Not a ton going on here with DK and Lockett locked in as the top 2 guys. Carson is back. How important is the summer of Penny in your mind, Adam? Rashad Penny, if he's healthy, clean bill of health, heading into week 1, I say we pencil him in for 10 touches a game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I could see that. They also, I know talking to them, they like to use him on 3rd down as well because he's explosive. He's just, it's been unfortunate, these knee problems. This offense this is going to be, the way that they explained to me is that this is going to be an old school West Coast offense. It's literally going to force Russell Wilson, if he does his job, to get rid of the football quickly. We know that's always been a challenge for him. That's why Shane Waldron is there. Russell Wilson signed off on it. He liked his meeting with him. but we'll see what happens. You know, the run game's going to happen because this is what Pete Carroll believes in. If you look at the first half play calls of last season to the second half play calls, this is where Pete Carroll came in. So we'll see what happens.
Team's going to play cover 2 and all that.
That's what
that could be where Gerald
me.
Everett comes in.
They said that was what the tape showed them. They said that was part of it, but I still would argue. Look at the first half of each game in the first 8 games. So the play calls of the second half, they're different. We could say all we want about they play cover 2. That's fine, but there's a reason why Brian Schottenheimer's not still there. So
Wilson did not play well at all down the stretch. His last 7-8 games were bad.
Yep.
Yeah, Greg. I mean, do you get surprised at all at how streaky Wilson is?
He's always been that way. If you go back with Seattle, even, and again, this is not a knock on Wilson. We know he's a great player. That's not the point. But Seattle's always been very odd offensively. They've always had 2, 3, 4 games every year where their offense is just not very good at all. And it's very strange. And, I think I'll say this. We're not there, okay? And it's easy to say that Pete Carroll, defensive guy, wants to run the ball. That's easy to say. But every coach wants explosive plays, and they make their share, no question. But why does Pete Carroll want to run the ball? Maybe he knows, and I don't know the answer to this, but maybe he knows that that's the best way to get the most out of Russell Wilson. Maybe Russell Wilson is not the quarterback you want dropping back 40 times a game by choice.
Yeah, not a structure guy.
Yeah, I mean, so, they brought back Chris Carson for a reason. They drafted Penny for a reason, even though he's been hurt, but they drafted him for a reason. So they want to play a certain way. Do we know why they specifically want to play that way? That's open to speculation. But this is the way they want to play.
Because they know Russell's a playground mentality type of guy.
Well, again, we can speculate on that, but this is the way they want to play.
It's the way Pete wants to play. Yes.
Yes.
Pete wants to play.
Dwayne Eskridge.
Love him. Great pick.
What do you love about Dwayne Eskridge? And is he ready? Can he be utilized right away? Maybe in a limited role?
Yes. Explosive, super competitive. He was a defensive back. He's only played full-time wide receiver for 1 year. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up outside. In fact, I think despite his size that he can play on the outside. And I guarantee that they will do that because Lockett can certainly line up in the slot.
Yep.
Eskridge is an explosive guy. He's explosive as a route runner. He's explosive vertically. He's explosive run after catch. He was one of my favorite receivers to watch, and he was totally virgin for me. I knew nothing about it. In fact, the reason I watched him right after the Senior Bowl because Adam told me that, hey, Dwayne Eskridge had a great week at the Senior Bowl. I knew nothing about
Everyone bragged about him. Every scout that I talked to was there. He came with a purpose, Greg. He was like, he knew this is his one chance from playing at a top school. Hey, these guys are there. I got to ball out. And he was just amazing, apparently.
And he's super
They've been looking for a slot guy, Adam, right?
Yeah, they tried John Ursula. He's still there. He's still on the roster, but it didn't work. So what I understand is that Greg's right. They're gonna move Eskridge around a little bit. He'll definitely be their third receiver. They don't have a floor. Well, Freddie Swain would be that guy, but he won't really.
Freddie Swain did okay last year.
Yeah.
I mean, again, they obviously drafted Eskridge for a reason.
Yeah.
Swain did okay. I mean, it wasn't
he'll be their
oh my
4,
God.
right? Eskridge will be their 3, and also I love the signing of Gerald Everett, who's definitely burned them. I know Seattle has had some games where they didn't cover him very very well, and now they got a playmaker because Will Dissly did not, John, as you know, he really surprised them first couple of years, and then too many knee injuries. So Everett now is going to be their move guy, and this is I'll tell you what, this adds another dimension. This when they do throw it, there's some playmakers on this offense.
Everett and Eskridge, is that enough to differentiate ourselves from last year, basically?
In terms of
impact.
Yeah, look, Metcalf, Lockett, Eskridge, and now Eskridge has got to get up to speed on the offense. This is going to be certainly different for him, but Everett's a slot tight end. So yeah.
I mean, they really got nothing other than DK and Lockett.
They got 4 pass targets. Swain would be the 5th.
Makes sense. Not very encouraged with the defense, honestly, but I don't even think we need to
I'm
address
just
it.
going to say the offensive line is still a work in progress. They think it's going to be better. The right tackle position is where they struggle a little bit.
It's been a work in progress since Walter Jones
yeah.
retired.
Yeah.
Well, they have Gabe Jackson now at right guard. They feel that their guards are really good. Damian Lewis was a good rookie last year. But yeah, there's the right tackle on center would be, Posick, I think is probably better as a 6th or 7th guy, but we'll see.
Finally, last team to cover here in today's volume 2 edition of the offseason powwow here at fantasypoints.com. The LA Rams, and looking good. Greg, I know you've always been a Stafford guy, bigger arm, more downfield throws probably coming.
All right, here's my
second reaction.
I'm gonna be a social media guy now, and I'm gonna make a bold statement
Hot
right
take?
now. Okay,
Hot take coming at you.
all right.
Yeah.
I want everybody to put.
Hold
this
on,
out
let me put
there
my
so you know.
seatbelt on. Hold on, let me put my
Hold on,
seatbelt on.
Yeah.
Buckle in.
You ready?
I'm
Yep.
ready.
I think if he plays all 16 games and there's 17, excuse me, and
Yep.
there's no injury, I think Matthew Stafford could be in the running for league MVP.
I love it.
Mhm.
I love it.
All right. 40 touchdowns season.
I was just going to say 40. Just going to say it.
I mean, I think that you're dealing with a high-level talent, a really good schemer on offense, solid weapons. I mean, Kupp, Jefferson, Woods, Deshaun, who, again, won't be a volume target, but Stafford can throw it out of the building, and Deshaun can still run and go get it. They drafted Tutu Atwell in the 2nd round. That's a very intriguing pick. He weighs 149 pounds, which I think I weighed when I was 10 years old.
I was about to ask, when's the last time we weighed, other than Graham, who probably weighs 127 right now, when's the last time we weighed 149 pounds?
So, I mean, but when you draft a guy in the 2nd round, you have a plan for him. And he's a player with a plan. Because when you're 149, you have to have a plan. So they have a plan. It's a pretty solid O-line. It's not bad at all. It's not the best, but it's not bad. I really like Cam Akers. I think he showed, if he can stay healthy, that he can, be a solid back. I think this is a pretty good offense.
How about Cam Akers playing with a guy who's going to challenge defenses vertically more so than Goff, and second reaction, move the pocket, do more with his legs. I mean, it's nothing earth-shattering, and Stafford is a better quarterback anyway. So, I mean, all good news for Cam Akers.
John, let's keep in mind, too, what McVay had to do with this offense, especially last year. They ran tight formations.
Yeah.
Almost every single play. There was that was so highly schemed to get Woods and Kupp on these simple drag routes. I think McVay is going to be able to really open this offense up and try to run some more of the traditional 3 wide stuff and not run tight every single time, which will help. That'll help Akers too, because I mean, their run game, man. I mean, these defenses, when you run tight personnel like that, these defenses can kind of key in and just drop safeties down.
I think Schottenheimer was coaching the offense there at times last year. Marty Ball.
Yeah.
Well, you got Stafford. I'm not going to say they're going to throw it 45 times a game, but there's so many more throws you can make that you would ask him to make that you wouldn't ask Goff to make. That's kind of what I've asked people who've looked at both quarterbacks. I can't wait to see this. I just can't wait, because there's just Goff is a limited passer. Now you had Van Jefferson, Deshaun, and by the way, Deshaun and Sean McVay are very close. They became very close when they were at Washington together. And
is McVay going to appear on Deshaun's next rap album?
What was that?
He's producing it actually. He's producing it.
Sean McVay going to be on Deshaun's next rap album.
What was that last rap album for trivia? Do you know what it was called?
Oh, I forget.
I can tell you're bummed. No, but he's there for a reason. He's going to be, he might only get 15, 20 snaps a game. Robert Woods, we love. Higbee, I don't know that he'll get the ball a lot, but hey, this offense, the only issue is their offensive line isn't great. But
I mean, it's okay. It's not great, but it's
Boy, I mean, it just still felt very cohesive though, Greg, last year, right? I mean, is that me, or it just felt like they were not a problem really?
No, I would say, look, Stafford's just way more talented than Goff. Goff, by the way, is a nice thrower of the football. Goff is a way better than average thrower. When he's comfortable, he throws a pretty ball. I mean, he made a lot of really good throws in his career with the Rams. You know, it's easy to kind of rip him now and say, oh, he's not very good. You know, he's not a top 5 guy, but I mean, you can line up and play with Goff. It's just he has some potential limitations when he struggles with pressure and he has no second reaction ability. And those are would be seen as 2 meaningful limitations. Stafford's probably been an elite thrower since he's 2 years old.
Cannot wait. This might be the most fun offense we're going to see this season. Can't wait.
Of course, Stafford, the high school teammate of Mr. Kershaw in LA.
Yeah,
they're
Greg, big buds. Now they can hang out in LA. They can do some clubbing.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it. And by the way,
married.
Kershaw,
they both are.
Yeah, actually, I met Kershaw.
I hope nobody's taking that seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, you met Kershaw, Adam?
What's that? I met him actually at spring training.
Really?
In Arizona, NFL owners meetings. Yeah, he apparently has this. It was like 2 seconds. Somebody knew him. We were at Cheesecake Factory. This is probably like 6 or 7 years ago in Phoenix.
John Kershaw's having a good year too. He's 7-3.
Just moved up to 7-3 last night. He was actually brilliant.
So
when a strong 7 2/3, 1 earned run.
Oh no, real good. Absolutely. That was that short porch and left in Houston. That was that home run. He was great.
So getting back to this, Akers is their full-time back. We know that he did a good job coming back. You know, he became the guy late and did a very good job. I mean, the only question is, will Higbee get the ball anymore with Everett gone? Theoretically, yes. I know Greg likes Bryson Hopkins. We'll see if he's ready.
Well, again, I mean, I like his college tape. I don't know what their plans are.
Right. We'll see. We'll see if he can get involved. But the offense does not go through the tight ends. That's been very clear. I don't think that's going to change.
One fantasy nugget, Joe Dolan, just randomly, I feel like Darrell Henderson is a great stash and hope guy because he is a Cam Akers injury away from being like a top 15 back.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I just drafted him as my 4th running back in the best ball draft. Just, you know, as much as I love Akers this year, guys do get hurt. I think this offense is just going to be spectacular. I think it's an offense that, quite frankly, in general, John, is undervalued right now. Now, I just did a video breakdown for the Player Profiler draft kit, and Robert Woods is wide receiver 17 right now. I don't see why Robert Woods can't catch 90 passes this year. I mean, he's done it with Goff, but he
does it every year.
He does it every year. I just think this is going to be. I am so excited. If the Bears decide they're going to start Justin Fields week 1, man, I'm going to love that Sunday night football game between the Bears and the Rams. I'm excited to see Stafford in that uniform. I'm excited to see what he does with this offense. And, you know, I think Sean McVay, we just talked about Kyle Shanahan being just completely fed up with the execution. I think Sean McVay was fed up with having to do everything himself. Like, I think he was fed up with saying, man, I've got to put Jared Goff in a perfect situation. Didn't think he was, I think he wants a quarterback who can bail him out. And this goes back to the whole Mac Jones argument when Shanahan traded up and they're like, oh, we traded up for Mac Jones because Mac Jones fits that system. Well, yeah, he might fit the system. Jared Goff might fit McVay's system. But to me, that doesn't mean that McVay doesn't want a quarterback who occasionally is going to be able to bail out the system, or when the defense wins, bail that out or give him I don't think anybody who's a great schemer is going to intentionally restrict himself simply because he thinks his scheme is better than everybody else's. So I think I'm just really excited to see, this is an offense that has gone down from the top 3 in yards per play at the beginning of McVay's tenure to an offense that was in the bottom half of the league in yards per play. To me, that absolutely eats at McVay. And I think he's really, let's just say he's going to whip it out this year.
Just so you know, Joe, one thing I'll say about that is McVay was the one who basically pushed the general manager to trade Goff. He had enough.
McVay inherited Goff, as we know.
Yeah, you're right. He definitely wanted him off the roster. That's 100% correct.
Greg, and was Stafford the guy, Adam, or were they exploring other avenues?
There were two. There was Stafford, another quarterback, but Stafford was the one. Well, Stafford wanted out, and it just made so much sense. And I think Greg really pointed it out very well. There's so much more you can do with Stafford. There's in a throw that he can't make. I can't wait to see this. And I'm happy for him because he was sick of the losing. Now he's got a chance to win and be pretty special with a really good group of pass targets.
Defense lost a couple of key guys, but they should still be good. But Greg, we can end on the Cam Akers question here. Like, if Cam Akers is healthy and really, shows us the best that he can be, what kind of upside is it? I feel like he could challenge for the league rushing title, honestly, based on what he showed late last year, especially late. And you said this last year, the nuance to his game, the patient, it was definitely on display in like November, December.
Yeah, if he can stay healthy, he's not small either. He was 217 at the combine, so I don't know what he played at, but I mean, he's not small. I really liked the way in which he ran. I mean, is he the most explosive back out there? No. He's a slasher. He's a glider. But I thought he was very skilled, workmanlike. You hit it on the head. He had patience, vision. He understood fronts. He understood where to run, where not to run, based on the blocking scheme versus the defensive fronts. And by the way, you have to learn this at the NFL level. And he had a great feel for that coming out of college. So I really like Cam Akers. Your point about challenging for the rushing title, obviously that depends on number of carries. And we'll see if McVay, based on what Adam just said, if they end up throwing it a little more because the quarterback is better. We don't know the answer to that.
That's true.
That's hard. That's hard to answer.
I know he wants to run the ball. McVay is a guy who does believe in balance, and he does believe that the run game clearly sets up a lot of things you do with the pass game, just as Kyle Shanahan does. So they won't abandon the run game, John, but it's just hard to know right now what that balance will be.
I'm calling it right now. Jake Funk will be a cult hero on the Twitter in a year and a half. Just throwing that out there. I guess he's like a fullback, or is he?
John, he's a super athlete. Like
the kid he's the kid from Maryland, right?
Yeah. He's an incredible athlete. Like,
yeah, he is. Yeah.
So they drafted a lot of just freak athletes too.
Right.
John, what are you giving Stafford for pass attempts? Curious.
Yeah, let me pull that up. Bop. Try to keep it, I understand the defense is very good. So unlike the years in Detroit,
corner's a little bit, corner's actually a little shaky.
Yeah.
Ramsey.
But it's nothing like, didn't he throw it 700 times 1 year in Detroit?
626 in 19.
Okay. I mean, 700 seems absurd.
No, I'm talking about Goff. I'm sorry. I'm talking about Goff.
So Stafford, I have him with, oh, Jesus. Let me find it. Sorry. I got to resort here.
It's funny, just to make a point. Well, you're looking that up, John.
Yeah.
We every year we do the draft, obviously, and we talk more about it. And I've been watching quarterbacks coming out next year, and every year we talk about this quarterback has a gun. What an unbelievable arm.
Yeah.
I mean, we say that. Matthew Stafford. Now
that is a gun.
That's freaking high level. Matthew Stafford has a true hose.
Howitzer.
Wants to start comparing. Well, this guy's got a gun. Watch Matthew Stafford throw it.
Right. 35 attempts a game I have for Stafford. 16 games.
Higher. Actually, would go higher.
To Greg's point, they want to run the ball.
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Yeah, these are the things I'm thinking of though
I'm going 37, 38, but that's just me.
But the defense is good. They do want to run the ball. I mean, 35 a game. It's still a pretty healthy number.
It is. All right.
So, I have him with 32 tutty passes, 1 rushing. There is some upside to be had here. But I'm not going to project the guy to throw 41 touchdowns, but it could absolutely happen. Well, what could also happen is we could reconvene next week and crank out part 3 and 4 of a 4-part little series here on the interwebs.
Same time, Tuesday and Wednesday.
I believe we need to kind of fire that up and, run it up the flagpole and see what everyone's time is.
All righty.
But we'll get to that. And you can check out the first 2 divisions that we covered, the NFC East and the NFC North, on fantasypoints.com on the multimedia section there. Just click on the archives. Of course, this one. And then next week, we're back with the AFC. And Greg Cosell's draft guide is still available. Still believe we're getting some purchases there. It's absolutely great content. And your subscription to fantasypoints.com, you could save 10% using that promo code that is promoted here on the screen. So I'll wrap it up here. We thank Ben Kukanis for keeping us on the air and all that. I believe I had a little bit of a technical problem at the top, but all good there. We thank Adam Caplan, Greg Cosell, Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan. Have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we will catch you next week with the AFC version of the Fantasy Points Virtual Powwow.